The air tasted of stone and time, but what we saw, it wasn't from our world. The beam from my headlamp cut through 10,000 years of absolute darkness, painting a scene that defied all of history, all of reason. Deep within the Earth's gut, where no sun had ever reached, our ancestors had left us a message. But it wasn't about the hunt for mammoths or the worship of the sun. On the rough-hewn sandstone wall, rendered in impossibly vibrant ochre and charcoal, was a shape every child of the modern era would recognize. A disc. Sleek, metallic, and silent, it hung in the painted sky above stick-figure humans who were not bowing in worship but cowering in fear. Their spears were dropped, their heads tilted back in an expression of pure shock that transcended millennia. The silence of the cave was immense, broken only by our own ragged breathing. We had come searching for the origins of humanity, but we found a record of its first visitor. And the most chilling part wasn't the ship in the sky. It was the tall, slender figure descending from it on a beam of painted light, its form utterly alien, its hand outstretched not in peace, but in command. Our journey to that moment began 6 weeks earlier under the blistering Algerian sun. We were a small, almost laughably underfunded team, led by a man the academic world had long since branded a pariah, Dr. Eris Thorne. Eris was a brilliant archaeologist in his youth, but a lifetime spent chasing whispers and anomalies had weathered him. He carried the desert in the lines on his face and a fire in his eyes that burned with unshakable conviction. His grand theory, the one that got him laughed out of lecture halls from Cambridge to Cairo, was that the Neolithic revolution wasn't a revolution at all. It was an inheritance, a gift from the stars. I was his cartographer, Lena, dragged along by the promise of mapping one of the last truly uncharted cave systems on Earth, and frankly, by a desperate need for the work. I was the skeptic, the grounding wire for his high-flying theories. Rounding out our trio was Jabari, our Tuareg guide, a man of few words whose ancestors had roamed this forest of stone for centuries. He navigated the labyrinthine canyons of the Tassili plateau not with a GPS, but with a deep, instinctual knowledge, and he spoke of the caves with a quiet reverence, calling them the sleeping places of the Janoon, the sky spirits. This desolate landscape, a plateau of wind-carved sandstone rising from the sea of the Sahara, was Eris's final gamble. He was searching for one specific cave, mentioned in a fragmented Berber text, a place rumored to hold the first memory of man. For weeks, the plateau tested us. The sun was a hammer, and the wind was a razor, scouring the canyons and whispering lies in our ears. Our water ran low and morale followed, but Eris pushed us onward, following the faded landmarks from his ancient text. Then the strangeness began. It started subtly. In a narrow gorge that Jabari called the Canyon of Whispers, our compasses began to spin uselessly, their needles dancing a frantic, chaotic jig. A day later, my high-frequency sonar, designed to map the rock density around us, started producing impossible readings, perfectly geometric voids deep within the sandstone, chambers that had no natural right to exist. Eris was thrilled, seeing it as confirmation. I dismissed it as magnetic interference, a software glitch. I couldn't explain the sound, though. At night, a low, resonant hum would rise from the stones themselves. It wasn't the wind. It was a pure, almost musical tone that vibrated deep in your bones, a sound Jabari accepted with a solemn nod, as if greeting an old acquaintance. He told us it was the Janoon dreaming. Then we found the antechamber. It was a well-documented site, known for its depictions of giraffes and hunters. But Eris, shining his light at a peculiar angle, found something others had missed. Faintly etched behind the larger paintings was a celestial map. It was shockingly precise, showing constellations in perfect alignment. The terrifying part, which I confirmed after 3 frantic nights of calculations on my laptop, was that it wasn't the sky of 10,000 BCE. It was the sky of 40,000 BCE. And the focal point of the entire star chart, the point from which all the celestial lines seemed to originate, was a section of a blank, unassuming cliff wall 50 yards away. It wasn't a painting, it was a map, and it was pointing. There was no obvious entrance, just a seamless wall of rock. But as Jabari chanted a quiet prayer, Eris pushed against the spot the star map had indicated. With a low groan that vibrated through the soles of our feet, a section of the cliff face pivoted inwards, revealing a perfect black square. The air that flowed out was ancient and cold, carrying a scent like ozone after a lightning strike. The humming was no longer a whisper. It was a clear, resonant note, pulling us in. We stepped across the threshold, and the world outside vanished. We were in a vast, perfectly circular chamber. It was no natural cave. The walls were too smooth, the dome of the ceiling too precise. And covering every inch of it was the mural. It was a single, continuous narrative that wrapped around us. The scene from my headlamp beam was just one small part. To our left, the story began. The disk, rendered in a pigment so black it seemed to drink the light, descended upon a terrified, primitive tribe. But as the panorama continued, terror gave way to instruction. The tall, slender beings, their limbs unnaturally long and their heads gracefully oversized, were not depicted as gods, but as teachers. One showed a group of tribespeople how to plant organized crops. Another pointed to the heavens, and the stars on the cave wall next to it glowed with a soft, phosphorescent light of their own. It was a history of directed evolution, a visual record of humanity being uplifted. "Aris," I whispered, my voice trembling, "look at their hands." He followed my beam. Every single human figure in the mural, from the smallest child to the elders, was painted with 6 fingers on each hand. We checked the photos on my digital camera from the other caves. 5 fingers. Always 5. This tribe, the people who met the visitors, were different. That's when Eris saw it. In the exact center of the floor, a circle was carved, filled not with pictures, but with intricate symbols. They were geometric, mathematical, more like a circuit board than a language. He knelt, his face a mask of pure, unadulterated awe. "This isn't a story," he breathed, tracing a spiraling symbol with his finger. "It's a schematic." The moment his skin touched the stone, it happened. The humming instantly escalated into a deafening, soul-shaking roar. The glowing pigments on the wall flared, blazing with an impossible inner light, illuminating the chamber in strobing blues and greens. The figures in the mural seemed to move, to writhe in the flickering light. A wave of pressure slammed into us, and every piece of our equipment died at once. My headlamp, Eris's flashlight, the camera's LCD screen, all blinked out in the same instant. We were plunged into a darkness so complete, so absolute, it was a physical presence, suffocating us under the weight of the mountain and the roar of a technology 10,000 years dead. The sound stopped as suddenly as it had begun, leaving a ringing silence that was somehow more terrifying. We don't know how long we were in that absolute darkness. It could have been minutes or hours. We stumbled out, clawing our way back into the Algerian sun, gasping like newborns. We were dehydrated, disoriented, our memories of the event fractured and dreamlike. All our digital equipment was useless, every memory card wiped clean, every battery dead. Only Aris's old analog film camera, a relic he always carried for luck, had survived. When he finally had the single photo he managed to take developed, our hearts sank. The mural was there, but it was a ghost of what we had seen. The unearthly glow of the pigments hadn't registered on the film. The tall, slender beings were faint, translucent outlines. The terrifying disk was a blurry smudge in the painted sky, easily dismissed. The detail of the 6-fingered hands was lost in the grainy resolution. It was a picture of a cave painting, nothing more. Our official report was buried, dismissed by the authorities as the product of heat stroke and shared delusion. Eris Thorne became a footnote, the brilliant man who chased a shadow too far and lost his mind in the desert. I left the field of archaeology entirely, unable to reconcile the neat, orderly lines of history with the impossible truth I now carried. But sometimes, in the dead of night, I can still feel that low, resonant hum in my bones. And I'm left to wonder, what was that place? Was it a tomb, a temple, or a classroom? What became of the six-fingered tribe who were touched by the stars? And if our oldest ancestors were not alone, are we?